coming at you from Miami, Florida. If you could choose between this one and this one, which one would you choose? Let's find out which one is better. So both are already full-blown classics. One a little bit more than the other. They're both from completely different eras. It's reflected in the construction and in the actual drive of these cars. You can find great examples of all of these cars for about 15,000 bucks, which is a heck of a deal. The oldest Boxster 986 are now getting close to about 26 years old, and the 944s closer to 40. That's a long time. So the condition of the car starts turning into one of the main factors when you're comparing these, because they've all lived a very long life. But just the fact that you can still daily drive these cars says a lot about them. Yes, even a 40-year-old 944 is daily drivable, and it is fantastic. The Boxster is far more modern than the 944. Far more modern. The 944 is actually a 924, so it's actually a 1970s car. Even though the interior looks very similar from 944 to the 968, which is a 90s car, the bones go all the way back to the 1970s and Volkswagen. The Boxster is a modern car. It's actually kind of crazy to call a 986 Boxster a classic because in my eyes it's still new, but they are getting very old. So condition is number one priority. So let's hit some of the points and comparing these cars and see which one is best. What might be best for me is definitely not what might be best for you. So let's dig in. But first, I need a huge favor. Like and subscribe to this channel. It really does help with the algorithm. Let's go. Performance. These cars accelerate completely different. The 944 has a far more conventional engine with the balance shaft and 4-cylinder. It's actually very smooth, but it sounds completely different than the Boxster's motor, which has a flat 6. It's hard to compare as far as acceleration since they're both not fast by today's standard. What really does stand out is the sound. The 986 Boxster sound amazing. They sound really good. As a matter of fact, that's actually the main reason to get a 986 Boxster. It has a flat 6, and that flat 6 sounds unbelievable. The 944, in my opinion, feels like it handles a little bit better. Now, how can it handle better than a mid-engined Boxster? Well, it's got a perfect 50-50 weight distribution. And when that car came out, it won every single comparison. The Boxster too, by the way. But the 944 was more expensive relative to when the Boxster came out, even though they were both entry-level Porsches. And all of that shows when you're driving the car. The Boxster has a way cooler sounding engine, but the structure has like a resonance that doesn't feel as solid as the Porsche 944. The Porsche 944 feels super solid, and that affects the engine, the transmission, suspension, everything. It's colored by the structure of that car. The Boxster, totally different. It's all about the engine and the engine sound on that car. So as far as performance, 0 to 60 times, quarter mile times, it's really irrelevant. To me, the 944 is the handling car and the Boxster is the sound car. Just sounds really cool, and the 944 just handles amazing. Next up, looks. Which one is more retro cool? In this one, I've got to say something about this that is kind of interesting. Every single Porsche, given enough time, becomes ultra cool. I mean ultra cool. Look at the 924s, especially in crazy colors. So you have a 924 with a spectacular green. The crowd is around that car instead of a brand new 911. So the cool factor as far as aging goes is heading heavily towards the 944 now, especially if you're looking at cars to show off. It looking totally different than anything on the road today. It has an edge just because it looks different, and whatever looks different draws a crowd. The Boxster is a modern Porsche. It being a modern Porsche means that it looks more like a lot of the other Porsches that are on the road. So even though that's a beautiful car, the fact that it's similar to a lot of other 996s, 997s, and just the overall aesthetic of the new era of Porsches means that that car draws far less crowds today. But given enough time, the same thing is going to happen with the Boxster. It just needs a couple more years. This novelty, as far as the car being rare, is huge, and it's far more important than what people actually think. When the Boxster first came out in 1997, I remember people were trading brand new 993s for the Boxster. There was a waiting list for this car. There wasn't anything like it on the road. The fact that there were already many 993s on the road in 1997 versus Boxsters meant that the Boxster stood out far more than the 993 in its time. The same thing happens to all Porsches eventually, just on the other end. As time passes, more used classics get taken off the road and replaced with newer cars. So when you are the only one driving one of the older classic Porsches, you stand out more. That's happening now with Porsche 944s and 924s, and eventually the same thing is going to happen to Boxsters. It just needs a couple more years. If you want something for yourself and you don't care about what anybody else thinks, then just pick the one you like. But as far as what's drawing crowds now and what's becoming cool in popular culture with advertising, with magazine ads, with the younger generation, then the 944 and 924 are becoming ultra cool. So that's the way I feel about looks. Next up, reliability and and maintenance. I'm gonna throw in there aging also. Part of the maintenance is keeping the car roadworthy, and that includes all the weather stripping and interior. So this is a mixed bag for both of them. The 944 being much older, a lot of them have been left out in the sun for decades. That turns really expensive because every single one of the dashboards crack. If you gotta start changing weather stripping on a Porsche 944, it gets really expensive. You could spend thousands of dollars just on weather stripping, and you gotta do it just because you don't want water coming inside the car. The 944 has better seats than the Boxster. Also a mixed bag because you can easily and cheaply replace Boxster seats, and 944 seats cost a lot more because 911 guys are buying 944 seats just to replace their air-cooled 911 seats for a lot less money. So it's more expensive to restore a 944 versus a Boxster. And on the Boxster, the tops can be an issue, but that canvas top really doesn't shrink with time like a vinyl top would. That is supposed to last a long time, especially if taken care of. But the mechanisms definitely go bad, and when they do, it's a headache. But then again, the dashboards don't crack in that car. So it's a mixed bag. What's a lot clearer is the mechanicals. A hidden engine versus an exposed engine. And in my book, this is where the 944 comes on top by a lot. Timing belt, water pump can all be done in a driveway. For a person like me, I love that. The Boxster, not so much. Everything is hidden in the Boxster. You cannot see the engine when you pop the trunk. All you see is the top off for the fluids. Everything is done from underneath the car. And if you've tried to work on a Boxster on your driveway, you know that it can be a little bit of a headache. Ideally with the Boxster, if you have a lift, then that is one of the most pleasurable cars to own because you can just drop the motor and everything is easily accessible. But if you don't have the lift, then you need to find somebody with a lift or take it to your mechanic for even basic routine maintenance. So as far as reliability, in my book, that hurts a little bit the Boxster just because not everybody has a lift in their home, except my brother. He does. He's got everything. Very few of us have a lift at home. That's a factor. Now, there is one other big difference that I don't care about because I'll drive a death trap. As long as I make it out alive, I'm happy. And as a matter of fact, is one of the big reasons why the 944 and 968 and 928 Porsche didn't continue making these cars past 1995. I never hear it talked about is crash standards. New crash standards came in 1997 that all new manufacturers had to meet. That's exactly when the Boxster came out. It would have been far too expensive to have the 968 and 928 meet the same crash standards that the Boxster already met. So if you look at them side by side, you might think, well, this one has airbags and this one has airbags and this one's got anti-lock brakes and this one's got anti-lock brakes, but no. That's not the math to do. The math to do is that the Boxster meets the 1997 crash standards and the 944 and 968 do not. So if you want to know what's really safer, the Boxster meets crash standards of 1997, which is a very specific crash standard. If safety is a huge factor for you, then this is a big one. So which one do you choose? There's a lot of intangibles with these cars and nobody really needs a Boxster or a Porsche 944. You buy it because of the intangibles, how it's gonna make you feel. For me, the engine sound of the Boxster is huge for me. I mean, the sound of that car is unbelievable. But in shows like Radwood, the 944 is the one that's gonna get most of the looks. You need to drive both of them. Either way, you can't go wrong with these cars. Like every classic Porsche, they're becoming cooler with age and there's a ton of original parts to keep them on the road long term. So choose your weapon carefully. These cars are only getting cooler with age. Now you know.